2024 is the year of elections. Now, for the first time in human history, a record 67 countries are going to the polls. But there's one issue unifying many of these elections. Several candidates in these elections face prosecution. It's almost unprecedented. In the United States, former President Donald Trump faces serious charges that could lead to his conviction. In Pakistan, Imran Khan just received back-to-back sentences for corruption and treason. And in South Africa, the African National Congress is riven with charges of corruption. Is this a global corruption countdown? And joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Mr. Robinder Sachdev, and my colleague Kartikeya Sharma. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. We were talking about how unprecedented this spate of elections is. The whole world seems to be going to the elections, 50% of it, in fact. Kartikeya, is it surprising that so many of these candidates are facing very serious charges of corruption?
I'm not surprised. I think corruption as a narrative is very dominant. If you look at Indian politics, corruption as a narrative has come back again.
Yeah.
Though it was in 2013, corruption as a narrative, it disappeared by 2018 and 19.
Yes.
But if you look at what has happened in Jharkhand, if you look at what's happening in Tamil Nadu or with the Pawars or, in many other states, corruption as a narrative has returned.
Right.
That's one. And in India, which is the largest democracy, and if you talk about corruption in context of the larger world, yes, it is. Look at Imran Khan. Bushra and Imran Khan, both of them have received 10 and 14 years. But I would say that Indian story, in midst of all this, will be a story of continuity also, as we had discussed it a number of times.
Absolutely.
There are autocrats who continue on world stage.
Right. Autocrats on the world stage, and in fact, one such autocrat or the fear of his return is actually, galvanized the United States. Ambassador Sajjanhar, Donald Trump, the autocrat in waiting. How significant are these charges against him? It's quite possible he could be in jail in a few months from now if the Supreme Court has its way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep. Yes, I think it's really a toss-up as far as Donald Trump is concerned, although, your last sentence was that a Supreme Court has its way. The way I would look at it is that many of the judges on the Supreme Court bench have been appointed by Trump himself.
Right.
If I remember correctly, I think the score is 6 conservatives who have been appointed by Republicans. Out of them, 3 have been appointed by Donald Trump himself.
Right.
And there are 3 who are, who are of the more liberal hue, so to say, variety. So, if the case were to come to the Supreme Court, I think they will vote according to their convictions, and that, might really trump in favor of Trump, so to say.
Right. Trump in favor of
so,
Trump.
yeah. So, I think there is a likelihood that, if he gets convicted and if he gets debarred, like some of the states have debarred him, but then he has also gone to the Supreme Court asking for that disability to be removed. So we really have to see, because I think as far as the United States is concerned, Sandeep, I think it is totally uncharted waters. This is not,
absolutely.
Trump himself is a very unusual sort of a political personality. I will not call him a leader that way, although there is, the Republican base, the conservative base is fully in support of him, and that is why many of his opponents from the Republican party, they also fell by the wayside very quickly. So we'll really have to wait and see. But yes, if Trump were to be on the Republican ticket, then of course it's going to be a huge question mark as to who might be able to sneak through in a Biden-Trump tussle.
Absolutely, and the latest news, Kartikeya, is that Trump is ahead of Biden, and that's worrisome.
You see, it's not only, yes, Trump is the most important election, but if you look at Indonesia, if you look at Malaysia, if you look at even the politics of Bangladesh, corruption as part of a political narrative closer to election has been there.
Right.
But there are only few states where people have gone behind bars. You know, Pakistan is a fractured, hard state. You know, politicians go behind bars.
But the Prime Minister or a former Prime Minister or a former President being accused of corruption, that's the first time, I think.
It also depends. It also depends how hard you have rubbed the army the wrong way in Pakistan.
in Pakistan, which is, and Nawaz Sharif, this is the same thing that happened to Nawaz Sharif 5 years back, and he was.
But I think Nawaz Sharif is smart because whenever he gets the kick, he becomes quiet. He goes to Jeddah and comes back after 2 years. Unlike Mr. Khan, who created ruckus in the streets of Karachi and Lahore with Tehreek-e-Labbaik.
Challenging the
military
and the army. Mr. Sachdev, these two candidates, we were talking about how they're kind of outliers in a way, both Donald Trump and Imran Khan. You know, they're larger than life politicians. They were not career politicians. They were like outsiders. They were like black swan events. And now today, both of them facing very serious corruption charges. Is this a case of the empire striking back? You know, the establishment which sees them as rank outsiders and, you know, trying to get back at them.
Interesting point, thank you. Yes, it could be the empire strikes back, but it also could be that these quote-unquote outsiders played fast and loose with the established norms.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that could also be said. Not to say that, you know, career politicians have also not indulged in corruption. Talking of former prime ministers, presidents, I'm reminded of Malaysia. You know, Najib, the former prime minister, president, whatever, for 10 years.
Yes.
He's been in jail for 12 years now because of a major, you know, corruption money scandal, so to say.
Yes.
But yes, these are, as you said, you know, especially Trump and Imran Khan are charismatic personalities also. So they do draw more attention. And for us in India, definitely, yes, both are interesting place to look out for.
Right.
As far as Trump is concerned, Trump is in some serious trouble.
Yes.
Okay, one little bit financial, by the way, you know, his legal bills apparently have added up to over in the second half of last year. I think there's a report have added up to $58 million, legal bills alone.
Right.
On top of it, if he has to pay the $83 million to this lady, Carol, right, as
damages,
damages, right?
Yeah.
So that takes it to $140 million only so far. And by the way, these are different category. The real corruption charges against Trump are, which is the jury is out really, is wherein his companies are accused of, you know, inflating the value of their physical assets so that they could get loans at better rates and terms, and at the same time lowering the cost of the assets so that they pay out lesser premium on insurance. Now, that is good corruption. I mean, that is pure corruption, right? So, and that could end up costing him upwards. I think the number being tossed is around $350 million for the Trump organization to pay and not be allowed to operate in New York. So that's it. But yes, Trump is building up a momentum on the political side of things. He is building up a momentum and may not be surprised that, yes, he does occupy or get into the White House. That cannot be said for Imran Khan, by the way. Imran Khan has been totally, as we can all see, has been totally, you know, totally cut off from the political system. In a sense, I mean, Imran Khan's, what he says, even TV channels in Pakistan are not allowed to carry it. So notionally, that's not a democracy, that's a dictatorship.
Absolutely.
If what, I mean, whoever is...
I have, that's a very relevant point he has made. You know, to pick it up from his last word, dictatorships, you see, democracies will have corruption issues globally. So the larger issue is, do we have healthy democracies? I would say the problem is that healthy democracies are reducing in number. We have got robust autocracies in the world. Can you have a corruption case against Putin? Can you have a corruption case against Erdogan? Can you have a corruption case against Kim? Or can you have a corruption case against Sultan of Johor? Or can you have a corruption case against a despot in Ghana? Or can we have a corruption case somewhere in Djibouti? No, because they are autocracies, fractured systems of governance. But you can always have a corruption case in good democracies, and people can comment on it. So when we say global corruption crackdown, it's very good. It also tells us they are democracies. But there is a larger issue of, you know, thriving autocracies, democracies failing. And I think that should really grab more eyeballs, because ultimately unhealthy democracies will create their form of autocracies. And even if the Bangladesh suits us, the form of democracy they are practicing in long run is not healthy.
Is unhealthy. How would you define Pakistan then, Kartikeya? Pakistan is a very strange case of the military controlling power. It doesn't have to stage a coup now to capture power anymore. It's always in power. It's the eternal establishment.
I would,
it's an imperfect democracy.
This stays with me. The ambassadors are the better person, the experts. So Jinnah did not choose to become the Prime Minister of Pakistan like Pandit Ji in India.
Yes.
He chose to become the Governor General of Pakistan.
Yes.
वो बुनियादी गलत है.
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, Ambassador Sajjanhar, I was in Pakistan many years ago, and I was speaking to one of the federal ministers there, and he was from India, and he mentioned this point that Kartikeya made. He said that, look, the problem with us and you is that our father died soon after partition, whereas you had a steady hand that led you for almost 2 decades and put you on the path of democracy. I mean, he was hinting at the fact that, look, we are an imperfect democracy and we live in fear of the military. How long is this going to continue? You see any possibility of a civilian prime minister, actually coming to power in Pakistan with full powers, like say they do in India? Nawaz Sharif at one point was the only politician in Pakistan, but he is now co-opted by the military.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll really have to wait and see. I think these are very relevant points that have been made by you and by Kartikeya. But, by that argument, one would, be forced to suggest that Pakistan is a democracy. I think Pakistan is a hypocrisy as far as, pursuit of democratic principles or rules are concerned, because it is always the army that decides.
Yes.
In 2018, when Nawaz Sharif was put behind bars and he was disqualified from participating in elections, meaning, what was it? It is because he had stepped on the toes of the army.
Right.
That's all. And at that time, even Imran Khan did not have much of a base, and that is why it is said he was a selected prime minister.
He was a selected prime minister. In fact, I was just reminded, Ambassador Sajjanhar, of this. I have this plant right here. It's a bonsai, and that's what they say about Pakistan. Pakistan is a bonsai democracy. It's always in the shade of the powerful Pakistan army. So, but you've gone a little ahead and you call it a hypocrisy. But that point is well taken, Kartikeya. The fact that all these countries, they're all different, very important countries. South Africa as well.
On serious note, if you ask me, on serious note, Pakistan can, I think, only become a democracy if you put it under some land reform.
Right.
And land reform should include the Pakistani army.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest act of social democracy which happened in India was land reform.
Yes.
And for that, Nehru had to fight the zamindars in the court.
Yes.
And the amendments to Indian constitution had been done because most of the zamindars were going to the court saying that this is our basic right. You can't take away the land. So social democracy is absent in Pakistan.
You don't have a middle class. You don't have a middle class.
You don't have a middle
class. But that's a very important point that you raised, Kartikeya. Mr. Sachdeva, this point of land reforms in Pakistan. I mean, this is something that we take for granted. India mein land reform ho gaya, fine, it's okay. But in Pakistan, the feudal elite, the 20 or 22 families that control Pakistan, they continue in power for 70, 80 years. They're almost like the military. So you see this thing of that, the foundational thing of Pakistan, that you need to have land reforms to actually democratize that country. Is that going to happen any time, or this is just going to be?
No chance. But yeah, there is one element where it could happen. I'll come to that in a moment. You see, the army and the military, whatever this entire complex, they are deeply embedded within the Pakistan economy, running from companies in construction to banking to shipping to cinema malls, etc.
Right.
The Fauji Foundation, one of their main foundations, they have annual turnover of over 26 or 28 billion dollars, on which they pay no tax.
Yes.
In fact, IMF had put one of its conditions for its various tranches that Fauji Foundation should start paying taxes, right?
Yes.
Now that's it. About 15% of companies listed in the Pakistan Stock Exchange belong to the army.
Yes.
But where the possibility of land reform could be by a stretch, I would say is that given Pakistan's economic, troubles, it has been doing this.
Yeah.
What Pakistan has been doing, for example, in their summer 22 cabinet meeting, they approved that all the lands owned by the buildings of Pakistan TV and Pakistan Radio, apparently there are about 65 buildings across the country, like our Doordarshan may have.
Right.
They have been approved to be put up as collateral for further loans.
Right.
So you see, that could be the, that could be the screwdriver which will make them, but that will be not, we cannot say reform, that will be just peace. It's like putting your family jewels up for, collateral to take loans.
Right.
And that's what Pakistan has been doing. All their motorways, the toll roads have been hypothecated to the banks. Right. The next one to be going is the Karachi port, the north and the south.
Yes.
The Dubai ports want majority of it. Right. So Pakistan will be selling off its assets in times to come. Now, if that could be land reform, some part of it.
My God, that's selling the crown jewels, Kartikeya. And in fact, we were just talking about it, that the one single defense deal between India and the United States, the MQ9 deal, is $4 billion. It's more than the IMF dole that Pakistan
And more
received.
than that, you see, Pakistan has always behaved like a client state.
Yeah.
So when you have like Afghanistan is like a revolving door, Pakistan is like a client state.
Client state, a
so
rentier state.
You will inherit those. You will inherit the larger issues of those who want to influence you. But I would say that in the global corruption crackdown, I think those countries fare well, where the cost of losing power, Sandeep, is not much.
Right.
The problem is in those countries where the cost of losing power becomes much, they produce inconsistent behavior in democracy.
Right.
I'm not saying that we are immune to it.
Yes.
We are not immune to it. So, in countries where the cost of losing power is high, you will have lot of corruption, you will have lot of different form of autocracies or non-democratic behavior in place, because then the whole idea would be, haar gaye to kya hoga?
Right, right. So you can't afford to dismount that tiger that you're riding.
Yes.
It's very interesting analogy there. And Ambassador Sajjanhar, South Africa, our BRICS brother, what's going on there? I mean, Gupta Gate, Jacob Zuma, and now Cyril Ramaphosa. I mean, this is one shining democracy that was patterned on their freedom struggle, their African National Congress, patterned after us. And today they're like, I mean, the kind of corruption cases 1 year in South Africa are frightening. What happened there?
I think really to my mind it comes is the lack of institutions, because I think it is really institutions that keep any democracy on the straight, narrow path. And I would say, that has been the problem as far as Pakistan is concerned, because, they have not really allowed their institutions to develop. And that is the case also as far, in my view, as South Africa is concerned, because you have now Jacob Zuma on one side, he is moving out of the ANC. There is, now it is the personal animosities and the personal angst, the relations between the two major players having gone sour. And they have always been, let's say, competitors, but they have always been on the same platform of ANC. Now, even that platform has, is missing, because the president is on that platform. He's, whoever is the main candidate. What Jacob Zuma has said, he is not going to be supporting the ANC. So, the fissures and the fractures are deep within, and this is definitely going to create problems as far as that country is concerned. We have seen that, it's trying to take the, the high moral ground as far as international relations are concerned, international situation. But I think the domestic situation, with this Israel, and also I think on the BRICS issue, when the president invited more than 50 African countries as guest states and all that sort of thing. And basically, kowtowing to the Chinese also in that sense, because they feel that the bread is buttered on that side. So I think they are responding to situations rather than having a very well thought through, deeply thought through position on different issues.
I think you made the right example. Truth and Reconciliation Commission displaced political powers to black, but not the economic power. I remember in Durban, I wrote the article, you don't need to go to the black areas to see the problem they are in. You can smell the black areas miles away before you even land up in black areas.
The ghettos.
You can smell it. So, so borrowing from Baba Saheb Ambedkar, I think in your democracy, if you do not have equity or the social democracy in place, your corruption scale will be higher. Democracies which have equity and social democracy, the locus of social democracy, which Baba Saheb Ambedkar used to say that the most important word in our constitution for him is fraternity. It's fraternity. And fraternity is important to social democracy. You will have the issues of corruption because in absence of that, even institutions don't work properly. You know, the casteization of institutions is happening because of absence of fraternity or religious divisions in the institutions which should hold up to the powers that be. Happens because they give in to the communitarian views. So the fraternity, social democracy and the sense of equity, the absence of that corrodes democracy from within.
And absolutely, and the lack of institutions, as Ambassador Sajjanhar pointed out, that in these countries, Pakistan, South Africa, very weak institutions and unable to resist, stand up to powerful institutions, especially like the army in Pakistan. But Mr. Sachdev, this thing of Pakistan, how does it play out now? With the military in power, it's almost the permanent establishment. Is there any hope, as we discussed earlier, even in the near future, of the Pakistan military ever giving up on power?
Honestly, I don't think so at all. See, Pakistan has one big advantage, which it has leveraged all through the past decades, and that advantage is its geographical location. Earlier, it, due to Afghanistan, Soviets in Afghanistan, Americans funded it. Then when Taliban was there to kick out Taliban, and after 9/11, America and NATO wanted access to Pakistan so that, their logistics could move into Afghanistan via Pakistan. Pakistan took a rent for that. So Pakistan has been living and virtually, living on or off, rental income, maybe you could call it,
Thank you, Mr. Sachdev. Sorry, we're completely out of time there, but that's a very important point. Pakistan is a rentier state, living off rental income. Different states, different countries, all going into the elections, their own share of problems. A global corruption crackdown that we were talking about with Ambassador Sajjanhar, Mr. Sachdev, and my colleague Kartikeya Sharma is something that is going to keep grabbing the headlines in 2024, the year of the elections. India's laws are notoriously archaic, and for good reason. They were drawn up by the British over 2 centuries that they ruled over India. But now, India is changing. Last December, India replaced 3 of the most important criminal laws with 3 new laws. Now, these laws will be gradually rolled out over the year. But what are the challenges to implementing these new laws? And joining me to discuss this are Mr. Vikas Singh, Dr. Rajiv Nanda, and my colleagues Ashok Bagaria and Nivriti Mohan. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. Mr. Singh, why was it necessary to update these criminal laws like the government did just last year?
Well, these laws were drafted more than a century ago, and it was high time that we adapted these laws to the changing situation and to our current, expectations. And there were many provisions which could not be justified in today's day and time. And accordingly, there was a need to completely come out with a new law so that it is a law made by us after independence, looking at our experience of 75 years of independence and seeing the challenges that we faced in these 75 years, and also to ensure that these laws, are an instrument of change as far as upgradation of the legal system is concerned.
Right. Upgradation of the legal system, Ashok. Some of these laws are centuries old, dating back from the 19th century. What do you think are going to be the challenges in implementing them, these new sets of criminal laws?
Well, there are going to be challenges at multiple levels. Now, if we look at the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which replaces the Indian Penal Code, what it basically does is it does away with the old IPC.
Right.
That is the IPC regime, which has been in place since 1860. The police officers in this country have worked around the Indian Penal Code and the offences written into the Indian Penal Code. Now we have the Criminal Procedure Code, 1973. This is basically a procedure which has been spelt out as to how the trial should be conducted, how various processes around the crimes and the criminal activities will have to be carried out by the state or the state actors. That has changed. The third important limb of this whole criminal delivery system in this country is the Indian Evidence Act. Again, this has also been replaced by a new evidence law.
Right.
So once this overhauling of the three important limbs happens, you will require a lot of readjustments, not only on the parts of the people who are responsible for implementing law and order in the country, which are the cops, the executive magistrates, but also the judiciary.
Yes.
The judiciary, which is called on to enforce those laws or implement them, how they are going to interpret those laws or the new provisos which have been introduced, that will be a challenge, and how, more importantly, the lawyers also adapt to this law.
Lawyers also adapt to the law. And Nivriti, in fact, you've put together a documentary on this. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but first, the elephant in the room, while the laws have been changed, they've been upgraded, overhauled, as Mr. Singh said, a new law for a new Bharat, a century after many of these laws came in. The elephant in the room remains police reform. Till the time the police aren't reformed, they won't be able to kind of utilize these laws to the benefit of the people. Why do you think police reforms not taken place until now?
That you should ask the government. Why the police reforms have not been made? We are what has been done, ostensibly showing that some change has been brought in. Police reforms are certainly required, but why they are not done, that the government has to answer. Why they are not done. They are badly required, and without the police reforms, all these things will be, whether in the old form or in the new form, will be not effectively in a position to be implemented. So police reforms are required and they should be done, but why they are not done, I have absolutely no idea as to why the government is not insisting and taking steps for bringing in the much required, all these things. These Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha, Bharatiya Sakshya, all that, these are all replacing the laws which were more than a century ago brought in by Britishers. And what has been brought in is not only the cover page has been changed, cosmetic changes have been done with adapting to the Indian conditions, and they were all required, like for sedition and all that. The powers of police for detention and all these kind of things have been brought in. But all that said and done, things will not be in a right position moving, because till the time police reforms are not there, all this is meaningless.
Right, absolutely. Important point there, Nivriti. Police reforms haven't taken place. What's the reason why? There's a Prakash Singh committee, there's a judgment from the Supreme Court, 1996. It's going to be, 3 decades in a couple of years?
Actually, you are right in saying this, and I was talking to the experts also when I was doing this story. So they were telling that all the reforms, all the police powers of the police have been enhanced, and there is a possibility of these powers being misused by the state, be it the center, be it the state government, and also the police personnel can misuse that power given to them. So unless and until police reforms are not done, giving such powers to police is like giving powers to an individual, giving powers to the government, and government can act the way it wants to act through the police. So until and unless police reforms are not there, there is no meaning of giving such powers to police.
Mr. Singh, this point that Nivriti made, the other panelists have said it as well. Till the time police reforms don't actually take place, many of these laws are really meaningless. Do you agree with that?
So I had made this point in my detailed interview with Nivriti that police reforms are necessary, and the reason why they are not being done is because no state government is wanting to give up the power and control over the policing authority. So every state government feels, And with the result that what is happening is that if there are different political parties in different states, you will find crisscross cases happening now. BJP, getting cases registered in non-BJP states, and non-BJP states registering, or similarly in BJP states, cases being registered against people who are non-BJP. So all that is going to, only make the situation more murky, and only damage the criminal justice system rather than, improve the criminal justice system. I personally feel that the kind of powers that have been given now to the police, although sedition has been taken away, but the power which has been given to the police to decide what kind of things are anti-national is something which is like a draconian power, and it will result in state, fixing up people whom they feel are simply talking things which are uncomfortable to the state. So they will pick up people. Journalists will be picked up. People who are on social media will be picked up, and they will all suffer harassment at the police, because the idea of free speech always has been, and this is what we have actually incorporated in our constitution. What was the First Amendment in the US Constitution? That you should be, everybody should be able to say, in fact, very rightly, the US Supreme Court has said that the obnoxious branches should not be pruned, and they should be allowed to grow, because that's how a democracy is to be perceived.
Ashok, this thing that Mr. Singh mentioned about the police, that the fact that until you have police reforms, these laws are not going to have any teeth.
Well, I do not entirely agree there, because we've seen that the Supreme Court has been nudging the state governments, the central government, to bring in reforms. Although they have come in very fits and starts, and it's not been incremental in the manner in which the Supreme Court would have wanted. But at least I know of at least 2 instances where an attempt is being made to ensure that the police is free from executive control. So, for instance, let's talk about the appointment of DGPs. Now, the appointment of DGPs is done by the Union Public Service Commission, where the UPSC sends a panel of 3 names and sends it to the state government and says that these 3 people are who we consider are fit to be the DGP of the state, and you can select one of them, and the state government goes ahead and does it. So here, what has happened is that element of subjectivity has been removed, and UPSC, when it selects those 3 names, there is a higher degree of objectivity and merit which is introduced. Number one, although there is a huge problem, and Mr. Singh will agree with me, because I know he's appeared in the Supreme Court for many state governments, where the state governments do not follow this 2-year rule or the UPSC module, and they go on appointing acting DGPs. And even Uttar Pradesh is one of the states who for the last 2 terms has been appointing acting DGP to the state. The second is about the fixed terms or the fixed tenure for the district police officers, which is the superintendent of the police, which is the cutting edge, or that is the level at which policing is something which is required to be done most intensively. Now here again, there have been provisions, the Supreme Court has laid down that there should be a fixity of tenure, 2-year term. Do not remove them before 2 years. Most of the state governments are following it. Just because somebody is not following it doesn't mean that nothing is happening on the ground. Another thing with respect to these new laws, as to how they are also giving a little, in their own way, a nudge towards police reforms, is when we look at the Evidence Act.
Evidence Act, absolutely. The forensics, the introduction of forensics.
They have introduced the fact that forensics is mandatory during investigation, because Mr. Nanda and Mr. Singh will bear with me, because they've seen many cases than me, where they've seen that in criminal cases, the police investigation lacks in forensic investigation.
It's almost like an afterthought.
It's almost like an afterthought, even if it is there. Even if it is there. But in 90% of the cases, there's no element of forensic investigation. So these new laws, this new Evidence Act says that forensics is a must. Then we have introduced another new mandate which says that digital evidence will be admissible.
Audio recordings.
Audio
like
recordings.
Everything,
and all those things.
Yeah.
So in a way, what is happening is that we are definitely moving at a very slow pace.
Right.
But we are moving ahead.
We are moving in a slow pace, we're moving ahead. And talking about movement, it's Dr. Sachdev, Dr. Nanda, my mistake. Dr. Nanda, this hit and run punishment that's extended up to 10 years, isn't it a bit too much for, not reporting accident cases to the police? And in fact, there were a lot of street protests about this as well.
Even the drivers, I like the transporters and all.
Yes, they're all...
Earlier under 304A, it was a bailable offence. Even in the Thanedar could give you a bail. But now it is 10 years and all that.
Right.
I personally feel this is rather harsh.
Right.
And I don't think this will, once brought in, because the minister has assured them that the notifying this provision will not be there till the time we have a discussion with you. But I don't think so that he or anybody will be having the guts to stop this. As and when it is brought in, of course, I feel that it will be challenged in the court, and I don't think it will stand the scrutiny of court. It is too harsh. Too harsh.
Yeah. So it's too harsh. Nivriti, this fact that Dr.
Change
Nanda
is required,
yes.
but not to the extent that you go the other way around.
Draconian, 10 years.
Yeah,
and in fact, medical negligence also is, the punishment has been reduced to 2 years in imprisonment. Other cases, it's 5 years.
It depends on interest groups as to how much they can pressurize the government to go back on the laws that have been there.
The medical lobby was successful in their attempt, and that is how they have been able to bring in it will be with lesser rigor.
Right.
But nevertheless, see, all these things, I mean, could have been brought through the amendments also. There's nothing stopped them.
Yes.
All this sounds like North Indian laws. Bharatiya Nyaya Sanghita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha, Bharatiya. How do we, when we talk of the unity and integrity of India, should the laws not smell, sound, appear like the same as if wherever we are reading it, whether we are reading it in Srinagar or standing in Kanyakumari, we should be like Indian Penal Code. Maybe it was brought in by Britishers, but all that could have been, the names should have been in such a way that India should feel united with these laws. Not that they look as if the South Indians will think that as if this has been brought in by North India. North and South divide is, I mean, I feel, I smell it that way.
Right. Do you think that's going to be a problem, Nivriti, in the years ahead? You're a lawyer yourself. How do you see this in the courtroom?
Many experts and many people have been raising that these are
the language.
It is in Hindi, and most of the people in South India or on the eastern parts of India, they won't be able to understand what exactly Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita is or Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita is.
Right.
So yes, this and Advocate Vikas Singh was even saying that it won't be constitutionally right. to put it in Hindi.
Yes.
So it should be in a language that is understandable.
A universal language of communication. In fact, that's the. I'm afraid we're totally out of time here, but the new laws for a new Bharat, many slip between the cup and the lip before they can finally be notified. Thank you very much, Dr. Nanda, Ashok, and Nivriti.
News9 Plus. Download now.